so that they can record that, record your attendance. That would be great. And then I want to introduce you to Samantha Brown. She's an attorney. She's amazing. I've done consultations with Sam before, like, hey, help us out on this issue. She is someone that you can access directly through the SBDC by signing up for a consultation with her, and well worth the wait. So if you have legal questions or anything, that's a great thing for you to be able to do. And without further ado, I'm just going to let you take it.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you guys. As Dawn said, my name's Samantha Brown, Samantha Peasley. I usually switch to Peasley for presentations, but I got caught up chatting with Dawn, who I just haven't had a chance to say hi to in a while. So that's my distraction there. We have fun. Let me pull this up. Today with me, we'll be talking about the Legal 101. Let me actually switch which one's where. Sorry, sometimes in Zoom, if I don't get this up ahead of time, I'm going to stop share real quick. It's the Zoom bar takes over the display settings. Now we'll try that again. Okie doke. Everybody good? Can see you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
We can see it.
Perfect. So hi everybody. I hope that at this point in your child's care class that you guys are having some fun, feeling a little bit more comfortable with things. Today we're going to talk about how to set yourself up, how to protect yourself, and then a little bit into some of the writings that we use for that one. So I kind of always start this one out with, if you guys could pop into the chat, if you have already set up a legal structure, and I use quotes for that because sometimes we're going to find out what some of those mean. Whatever that means to you right now, go ahead and put that in the chat. Kind of let me know who we're working with here. And if you also, so like LLC, sole proprietor, things like that. Just so I kind of know where everybody is. If you say haven't picked yet, fantastic. If you have picked, we're still going to talk a little bit about whether that's a good idea for you. Know that these things are not set in stone. We like to make sure that you pick the thing that's right for you and not the thing that you had to do because you panicked, because as you're going to register your company, somebody is asking you what your organization is. So this is no pressure as far as that goes. My legal disclaimer at the start of this is that this is all educational only. This is not legal advice. I am not going to be telling each and every one of you individually that what you're doing is right or wrong, what you should and shouldn't do. I can answer questions within this. However, I generally say, let's try and keep them to questions that are useful for the group generally, or about the what does this mean? If you have personal questions like so my partner and I have this set up in this way, but we're concerned about X, Y, and Z. Is this the right thing for us? Let's save that for a consult. Like Dawn said, you guys can sign up with a consult with me through the SBDC as part of this. And the more personalized it is, the more I might say, hey, that's a great question. Let's sign up for a consult to answer that. Still ask it if you're not sure what the distinction there is, or like, I think it might be helpful to more people, but I'm not entirely sure. I just like to give that disclaimer at the beginning in that I'm not being rude, but that I want to try and keep this useful for as much of the group as possible. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask those questions at some point. Also, I am not an accountant. We'll be talking ever so slightly about taxes today. My tax knowledge is largely contained within this presentation. So if you are asking questions about taxes, there's probably at some point going to be a point where I say, we've exceeded where I can go on this one. And I will recommend that you get a lovely SBDC consult with one of our financial folks who can give you a little bit better advice on that one. So kind of same thing in here. So now that boring stuff is out of the way, let's see, we've got So far, we've just got names. Don't forget to put in what kind of organization you have, if you already have one. If you don't, if everybody here is blank slate, oh, that'd be amazing. First time we would have that. Then that'd be cool. But it's just helpful for me to see that one. Here we go. Nonprofit. Ooh, fun. I don't get to talk about nonprofits too often. So
we have a lot of nonprofits in this class this time around as far as who registered. We've got a couple LLCs and maybe 4 LLCs and a couple S Corps, and lots of sole proprietors as well.
Awesome. So nonprofit folks, I don't have a full slide in here for you. I will talk about you with the corporations. That doesn't mean we don't love you. It just means that we don't often have a ton. And so I'll make sure that I do talk about that. Everything else, honestly, is pretty applicable to both. So that's exciting. I do see we do have those couple of LLCs in there. And actually, as far as that goes, nonprofits, you guys will see this on this first slide, even from the beginning. So we're going to talk a little bit first about structure, which always starts with our choice of entity. Now you'll notice I have 2 columns here. One is legal and one is tax-wise. So for those of you who've set up, you may have noticed that when you filed with the Colorado Secretary of State, what you were filing for might not necessarily have matched what you were putting on your taxes. So those might be a little different because legal is set by state law, tax-wise is set by the federal IRS. So legally, what we're looking at as far as options go are sole proprietors, partnerships. There's a lot of different kinds of partnerships. We'll talk a little bit about them, but usually we just worry about general. Emily, as far as the nonprofit goes, as far as the legal goes, nonprofit could be a not-for-profit corporation or a not-for-profit limited liability company. So usually you choose one of those in there. We've also started seeing, again, I don't have it in the slide because we don't get a ton in this class, but sometimes we do see public benefit corporations now. That's a recent one that sometimes we'll see in the childcare field. As a corporation, you don't typically pick the C Corp or S Corp when you file with the Colorado Secretary of State, but there are legal differences between that C Corp or S Corporation that come up in your documents. And so sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, corporation, and then not-for-profit corporation, not-for-profit limited liability company are typically our legal options. Then tax-wise, we tend to have Schedule C. Well, that one's kind of weird because it's either a sole proprietor or a single member LLC who doesn't elect to do something differently. Or there's a partnership, you're taxed as a partnership, S corporation, C corporation, or not-for-profit. So that would be that 5th line there, is just not-for-profit. If you've been approved as all of you would be 501c3s, I'm guessing. Usually with childcare, we don't have a 501c6. Ashley, if you're unsure, hopefully this will shed some light on. That's not unusual. I will tell you, to not be entirely sure what you have, especially because those legal and tax may be different. And so for example, I am an LLC taxed as an S corporation. Polaris Law Group is. We have an organization legally, we're a limited liability company. We are taxed as an S corporation. So you could be a limited liability company taxed as a not-for-profit if you have gotten that approval. Corporation taxed as a not-for-profit. Typically a not-for-profit corporation is going to be a little bit closer to a C corporation than an S corporation as far as the legal changes, but we'll talk about where those differ in there. So those are kind of the entity choices. So we're going to talk through each of them to determine what's right for you, make sure that those are right for you. Everyone, when I said I'm assuming 501c3, that's the IRS designation, not the legal designation. It has some legal tags that come along with that. When we get over to that, I'll make sure that we talk through that. If anyone is a 501c6, feel free to weigh in and I can talk about the difference between those. Not a problem. Yeah, lots of different choices here. Typically, though, I start us talking about sole proprietorship because it's the easiest. It's the easiest to understand. It's the default also. So if you just start watching little Timmy down the street and little Timmy's parents give you $100 a day to watch him, and you have done nothing else, you are now a sole proprietor. Congratulations, you're a business. So being a sole proprietor, all you have to do is do work for money. Great, that's easy. So when we see these rows that we're going to show in these, I'm comparing the formalities that you have to do to be each different type, the liabilities, so the risk that you're taking on as that type, and then a little bit on those taxes. So with a sole proprietor, if all you have to do is take some money to do some work, there are no formalities. There's nothing you have to do. You don't have to file anything with the Secretary of State. You can if you choose. You don't have to do any organizational documents. Can if you choose, not required. No EIN is necessary unless you're going to be hiring employees. And you make all the decisions. Central management. That means I do it. I decide when we're going to watch him, how long we're going to watch him for, how much we're going to charge his parents. Easy, right? The downside is full and 100% liability. You and your company are the same. So if I am Polaris Childcare instead of Polaris Law Group, and I'm a sole proprietorship, I can go around under my trade name. It's what we call it when you do a name that's different from your legal name. My trade name is Polaris Childcare. I and Polaris Childcare have full and 100% liability for anything that happens. And that means that while I'm watching Timmy is a little rapscallion, climbs a tree, falls out of the tree, breaks his arm. And his parents sue me for $50,000. That's what it ends up costing. If I'm a sole proprietor, full and 100% liability, I only have $500 in Polaris Childcare's bank account because I'm only watching Timmy. That means that they can come after my house and my savings account and my car for the remainder of that $49,500. Whether I'm responsible for that or not, liable for that or not, becomes a question for the attorneys. Obviously, if you have some insurance, your insurance can help out with that coverage there. We talk about that when you guys are going to meet the insurance folks later. But at the end of the day, I, Sam, am responsible if Polaris Childcare does not have the money. It also means that I have limited access to capital, so I don't have a lot of resources where I can find another $49,500 because it's just me. The second I add somebody else, I'm not a sole proprietorship anymore. So that's the risk. Now, a lot of people still like this, again, no formalities, and also really easy taxes. There's no separate business tax returns. You just file your taxes as normal. You keep all the profits. All of that $100 comes to me. At the end of it, I'm subject to a self-employment tax, potentially the marginal income tax rate, but we're not having to pay off a bunch here and a bunch there before the money comes down to me. So easy, 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 risky, risky, risky. Sole proprietorships. Makes sense, right? Partnerships are very similar, except for now there's two of you. So if Dawn lives next door to me and I say, hey, Dawn, this thing with Timmy's going well, but I want to go pursue law in my free time. Do you want to alternate days that we watch him and we share the money? And
No.
Dawn's smarter than this, so she says no. But in my example, she's going to say yes, because she completely got amnesia and forgot everything that I'm going to tell you today. So if Dawn and I are doing that, I do Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Dawn does Tuesday, Thursday. We split it 60-40 as a result of it. We are now in a partnership. Again, we didn't have any contracts. We didn't have to file anything with the Secretary of State. We could put together a loose agreement in there. Sam does Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. Dawn does Tuesdays, Thursdays. We split it 60-40. Whatever else it is we want to put in there, but it's not required. We're just automatically working together now. And if we don't have an agreement, we have to completely have unanimous consensus on everything. So if I say, hey, Dawn, I think it would be really cool for us to start watching other kids too. Dawn says, nah. Well, I can't do that as part of the partnership. I could now create a new sole proprietorship, but I can't do it as part of the partnership. Even if I pay her for it, we didn't have consensus. Also, now we're all up in each other's business with money. Our profits are going to be divided amongst us via our K1. So we're going to get this form where we get to say, hey, Sam gets 60%, Dawn gets 40%. Now, if we don't say Sam gets 60, Dawn gets 40, all of a sudden we're getting 50-50, even though I'm doing more of the work. So it can also get a little crazy with taxes. Usually that is the place where people are good at putting that one in there, but still subject to that employment tax. We're each just filing our own taxes as far as that goes. So there's one extra form to do for taxes, not too much as far as that goes in there. But now, here's the reason Dawn said no, under no circumstances. Sole proprietor, we're like this. Partnership, we're also like this. So if it's my day when I'm watching Timmy and he falls out of that tree, and we only have the $500 for Polaris childcare, and I skip town, Dawn is 100% responsible for the remainder of that $49,500, even though she wasn't there that day. She went to a Broncos game. She wasn't anywhere near Timmy. Doesn't matter. It's a partnership. Joint and several means 100%. It's then Dawn's responsibility to chase me down for my half or my share if she wants to, but she can't use that as a defense to Timmy's parents. She has to pay that full amount out of her house. So it's nice in that you have more money, more access to capital from both partners, but it's risky in that sense. And where a lot of people get into trouble with this is, let's say that my parents want to help me out with this. And so they say, hey, here's $10,000 to get this all done correctly. If we don't have something like a promissory note or a loan that says that that's a loan, which we're going to get to writings at the end, they're now a partner. We've created a partnership, which means that now, even though they have nothing to do with the work, because they're an investor in my company, they could be jointly and severally liable if Timmy falls out of the tree. Not fun. So as an attorney, we don't like partnerships and sole proprietorships. Maybe you can see why. This has nothing to do with being taxes then, which we'll talk about in a second, but generally sole proprietorships, partnerships, highly, highly, highly risky, really easy to get into accidentally. Let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, then we'll come back to the middle, and then I'll take some questions on that one. But the other end of the spectrum is the corporation. This one talks about S corporations because that's what we have the most, but I'll also talk about not-for-profit corporations in here. S corporation on the other side, there's a ton of formalities. You have to have a board of directors. You've got to document pretty much everything you do. You need to have written policies. You need to have written resolutions, quarterly meetings. You need to have bylaws, which we're going to talk about bylaws and operating agreements. Bylaws is the contract between the company and the people who own the company regarding how they're going to run the company, what happens when it dissolves. We are going to talk about these in more depth. If you have shares, you have to document who has what ownership where. It restricts what membership you can have. So not anyone can be a member of an S corporation. You can only have real people. So Polaris Law Group cannot be a member of Polaris Childcare. Sam can be a member of Polaris Childcare, but Polaris Law Group cannot be. No aliens. So, obviously we all want citizens of Earth here. Not sure if anyone's watching Secret Invasion. But if my cousin is Japanese, she can't invest, even if she thinks that this is a really cool idea. So they have to be US citizens or permanent residents. And has to be fewer than 100 of them, which usually is not relevant in this class. But it's always good to know that if you're wanting to do something like have all of the parents of the kids that you're watching become members, we're probably looking at something more like a co-op than an S corporation or a membership nonprofit. So membership-based nonprofits have the same level of formalities of S corporations, except for they don't have equity members. And I say it that way because there's no shares, there's no profit for an S corporation. So there's no owners of there's no profit in a for-profit corporation. There's profit in an S corporation. There's no owners of a for-profit, of a non-for-profit corporation. And so there's no shares to be given. There can be members. You can have a membership-based not-for-profit. So you can have member paying dues. Those members have certain rights and responsibilities that are very similar to the members of an S corporation, but because they are not receiving money, they don't have those same restrictions on membership. So other than that, still need the board of directors, still need all of that documentation, still need your bylaws. You have to put your not-for-profit purpose in your bylaws. But otherwise, the formalities are very similar between regular for-profit corporations and not-for-profit corporations. I did mention, because I think somebody was asking about C corporations. C corporations just take it all and knock it up a notch. So like if ideally you want a 3-man board of directors, 3-person board of directors for an S corporation minimum, you probably want 5+ for a C corporation. Quarterly meetings are soft requirement for an S corporation. They are a hard requirement for a C corporation. Certain financial filings are a hard requirement for a C corporation. SEC requirements, same for both. But once you do all these things, you've done all these things, the nice benefit is, instead of being like this, the members and the company are all the way like this. Oh, look at that. They're very, very completely separate. And in between them, each of those formalities that you do is a wall. So if you separate like this and you say, I'm a corporation, I'm done, but you don't do those formalities, there's nothing but empty space between you and your company. The law will determine you're not actually a corporation, pull you right back together. So if little Timmy's parents come out, Dawn and I start a corporation, and little Timmy's parents come after us, same examples before. If we have a board of directors and we have our bylaws and we have our meeting minutes where we make decisions, they would try to come catch us and they hit those walls and they can't. They're stuck with only the $500 that are in our bank account. Similarly, same thing for the members or board or officers of a nonprofit corporation. Those members, board, and officers are protected. If, and this is the limitation with board of directors and officers, if the board follows the best interest of the company and acts in good faith when they're making decisions. So for example, if the board only hired me because I'm the sibling of somebody on the board and they don't really know that I've ever worked with kids before, but I'm going to give them a cutback of 20%, that's not acting in best interest. So the board members who made that decision to hire me knowing that would still be personally liable for that $49,500. You notice in the officer liability, it also says no personal liability. That's the case with board of directors too, just usually board of directors are less hands-on. If the managing or supervising teacher in the childcare organization is the one doing that. So let's say that I have role of CEO or president or managing teacher, supervising teacher, and I am drunk when I'm watching. That will trigger personal liability, even if I otherwise would not have liability. So if you are doing something that is blatantly egregious, criminal, or intentional, it negates this portion of that. So just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean you can go drunk and wave your hands in the air and do all of that stuff. And then you can have those investors, same with from the not-for-profit side or the foundation side. I guess you guys could be 501c3s or foundations. You can get grants and other funding. So instead of investors, you get your funds in through a different arena, which does not create members or owners or partnerships when done correctly. So.
And in the childcare industry, there's an extra childcare tax contribution credit that donors can qualify for if they're donating to any childcare business, whether or not you're privately owned or a nonprofit. So just to be aware of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Dawn. And good answer, Dawn. I saw Emily's question, and Dawn is correct that so the question is, are parent members of a not-for-profit because they pay tuition? Does that tuition count as dues? Dawn is absolutely correct. That depends on your bylaws. You could totally craft not-for-profit bylaws where the parents are members and where their dues qualify them to be members and have some decision-making authority there. You could also write your bylaws where that is not happening in a million years. And where you clarify tuition is payment for services, it does not grant any additional rights or responsibilities other than the ability to have our company watch your children at the designated times and under the designated predefined rules. Go ahead, Dawn.
And can I just tell you, when I started this job 2 years ago, I had the bylaws in front of me and I was like, I have to read this stuff, right? Now I'm like, where are my bylaws? Because I don't like what's happening here. Who has this authority? Like, let me look at that, because it's the guidebook for how an organization runs and the dynamics between the executive director and the board and all of these great things. And so it's a very, very useful tool.
Absolutely. It's very helpful as far as that goes. So Emily, if that's something you're concerned about, you would definitely want to put in your bylaws how that's not going to happen so that there's no doubt. If it's something you want as part of your model, that's a great thing to have. And that would be something that you would also then want to incorporate how that happens, when it ends, all of that good stuff. So great idea there. Taxes for an S corporation are nice and easy. They are passed through. It's just a form called an 1120S. And then owners get their share of profits via K1, still only taxed once. But there must be at least one W-2 employee who receives a reasonable compensation through payroll. And nonprofits also typically have to have at least one W-2 employee. I think there's a grace period as far as that goes. But if you're having somebody who is regularly in there, you are not exempt from that requirement just because you are not-for-profits. Not-for-profits, unlike S corporations, can have volunteers, but it has to be in a role that does not replace or supplant a traditional employee position. So if you have a regular teacher, that's not going to be okay for a volunteer. C corporations, just so people know, part of the reason that we don't see it often in childcare is because it's double taxed. The money's taxed when it comes into the company, and then it's taxed when it's passed on to the owners. So we don't tend to see it a lot with smaller organizations. What about that LLC? We seem to skip it. Oops. And part of that's because, there we go. LLC comes back to the middle. So back in the 80s, people said, man, these corporations take a lot of work, but that partnership looks scary. Isn't there a way to do something in the middle? And they came up with the limited liability company, which is why it's really a legal entity and not a tax entity. It is limited liability company. You're still separate, but there's only 4 walls, and you get to kind of play a choose your own adventure game with what you do with it. So you can do member managed, which is closer to what a partnership or a sole proprietor is. But you could also do manager managed, which is kind of like saying we're going to have a 1-person board of directors. It's all centrally located. Members elect the manager, but then the manager runs everything. You have to have some documents like an operating agreement. You need to have at least an annual meeting and put your big decisions in writing. You can have, well, you should have separate finances. That is one of the 4 walls. You can have an EIN, but it's not required. You may have SEC limitations, but not necessarily, and you get to decide how you vote. And so while it's a little, some fewer things that are protecting you, you still get that protection if you follow those walls. You still get those protections for the managers and the members, but you're more likely to be able to have access to funders. But because it's this new weird fun thing, you choose how you're taxed. So by default, if you don't tell the IRS how you want to be taxed, if there's only one member of your LLC, they'll tax you as a sole proprietor. If there's more than one, they'll tax you as a partnership. You can say, hey, we would like to be taxed as an S corporation instead. Then you're a limited liability company taxed as an S corporation. Like I said, that's what Polaris Law Group does. Does not change the fact that we're an LLC legally. Just means that we want to be in that tax structure. You can also have a not-for-profit LLC. Then you are going to have a manager-managed LLC. You still want that. It's basically the equivalent of a board of directors. But it becomes less onerous for you to comply with some of those obligations. However, it can limit your funding options. I will say that I've seen some organizations that don't like to fund limited liability or not-for-profit limited liability companies as much as not-for-profit corporations, because they don't have as much of that paperwork involved. And so it can be a bit of a hindrance, but it really depends on what you're trying to do with it. And then, like I said, if you're doing limited liability company filing taxes as an S corporation, same rules as taxes, but otherwise legally, you're good. Always talk to both your accountant and your attorney before determining your pay structure within your LLC. If you have an LLC or within your nonprofit, always a good idea to understand where those lines are, what's going on there. So before we jump into the protections and writings, any questions about structure? I know I threw a lot of things at you guys. All right, I don't, oh, go ahead, Dawn.
Are you guys good? Are you overwhelmed? How are you doing? It's a lot of information, right? But that's okay. Like, you're going to be able to go back over these slides, watch this recording again if you want, just so that it can kind of get into your brain a little bit differently, right? Just plan on that. And when you come up with questions, you're going to be able to schedule a Samantha to get clarification on things as well. Okay.
And if you guys think of something as we keep going, just pop them in the chat. So good, cool. Lots of nonprofit questions, but yeah, Emily, I appreciate it. We'll jump off at our consult. But the other one that you had was very good and I think very helpful for everyone. So I appreciate that. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about our formalities. So we talked about them before, why we have them. If you don't have any formalities, you will always come back to that sole proprietor general partnership, which we don't like. The more of the formalities you follow, the more walls you will have, the more protected you will be. However, how many of you saw, oh, I need to do these formalities when you went to go file with the Secretary of State? They don't make you do it. It only becomes relevant when someone sues you, or when you're going to sell, or when you want a loan or a grant or some other funding. So everybody who wants your finances wants these formalities, but not until then. And if you wait until that point, it may be too late. Either you may get sued, you can't do it after you've been sued. You may miss that opportunity for that financing that you want. So we like to talk about them early. Now, with a limited liability company, there are only 4. We talked a little bit more about that with the corporation, so we will go into those, but I at least like to make sure everybody knows these 4. And then some of the other ones will come up within talking about these. So Secretary of State filings are the easiest. Most everybody gets these in there if they want to do anything, but make sure that you get your naming requirements correct. That sometimes is something that we see where people will put a suffix that shouldn't be on there. Like they'll put LLC if they are a corporation, and that shouldn't be the case. Or they don't put any suffix, and they are technically legally required, which puts you at a step back when trying to show what you are. Make sure you do these every year as well. You guys also have the industry filings requirements. So when you have to go on with DORA and make your filings, then you're going to have those as well. Those are considered in that same category. Operating agreement is that next one, or if you're a corporation, bylaws. They are the same thing with different names. So if somebody is saying, oh, do you have your bylaws? You can say, actually, I'm an LLC, so I need an operating agreement. And vice versa. Do you have your operating agreement? I'm a corporation. I have bylaws. We're going to go into what goes into that, but they are the contract between the company and the members of the company that says how it's going to run. Like Dawn said, that's your handbook, that's your Bible. Annual meeting minutes at a minimum. You can have them more regularly. Corporations should have them quarterly rather than annually. And I always like to say, make them also for those big decisions. And we're going to talk about what big decisions would trigger that. But basically anything that you want a track record of. And then keep those bank accounts separate. If Timmy's parents are paying me, they should be paying Polaris childcare, not Sam. And then don't transfer that money without proper distinction. So if Polaris childcare is paying me, it needs to say, this is payroll, or this is a profit distribution. I recommend this even for LLCs taxed as sole proprietors. Tax-wise, you don't have to do that as a sole proprietor. But if you do get sued or you do get that loan and there's just money going back and forth, you're not going to get the benefit of this wall. So even though the IRS doesn't require it, it's a good legal reason to do it. Those are the 4 things. That's easy. Easy, easy, easy. So what goes in the operating agreement or bylaws? How to vote. And this includes if you're a nonprofit or a corporation or a LLC who has a manager, how to vote on those roles. So, and then once you have those roles, what does the board of directors decide versus what do the members decide? So the members are only legally obligated to decide who the board of directors or manager are and when or how to let in new members. That's it. Oh, and when to dissolve is technically one that should go in there for the members. Board of directors can decide everything else, or you can say, honestly, there's some other things that we feel it's really important for our members to decide. I want to do that. If you're a member managed LLC, you get to decide everything. So then it's just, how do you vote? And that includes, like, do you need to be in person? Can people do a writing submission to do it? Can everyone hear each other? How many people do we need there? But then also, what should go in the operating agreement? How to bring in new members? Do they pay dues? If it's an LLC, do they need a cash contribution? What if they're a teacher of yours that you want to bring in because of the long service that they've had with your company? Can they come in without a cash contribution? Maybe you can have an either or. Does everybody need to agree on them coming in, or just a majority? What about if a member wants to leave? Dawn and I worked together for 20 years, and then Dawn says, Sam, I'm just tired. I'm done. What happens? Or worse, what if she doesn't make that choice? That kind of goes down further to exit strategy and what happens if something happens to you. What if Dawn gets COVID and I can't reach her for 3 months? Do we have a way to deal with that? What if everything required unanimous decision-making between us before then? Do we have something to cover for that if I can't reach her for 3 months, if there's been an emergency? Then that organizational structure. So your board of directors, what decisions they make, how they get chosen, how they can leave. If you have a manager, if you have officers, do you have your executive director? What other roles do you have? And then for those officers, who's responsible for what? So officers technically are a role where the board of directors or members have delegated a responsibility. They don't get it automatically. So you have to delegate it to them. Or you have to say how you're going to delegate it later. How to distribute profit. This is even important in a not-for-profit. I know that sounds silly. It's actually more important in a not-for-profit. In a for-profit, do you only pay yourself profit if you have 3 months of expenses tucked away? Do you pay yourself profit 50% of what comes in every month because you're an LLC taxed as a sole proprietor and that's how you're getting paid? You don't have a W-2. Do you only do it by a vote of 2/3 of the members? For a not-for-profit, do you need a certain amount of days of cash? And then if you have anything over that cash, you can spend it on improvements, refunds to members, donating it to another organization, using it for the betterment of your goals. The important thing for a not-for-profit is it has to follow one of those 501c3 goals that you tell them that you're going to do. Or if you're a foundation, where the money is going to go. How do you resolve disputes? What happens if Dawn and I have an argument? If it's just two of us, ooh, that's a problem, right? Maybe it's well, if it's financial, I know Dawn has a lot of experience. Dawn actually gets the tie-breaking vote. She gets a veto. Maybe if it's related to our hiring or firing, I get the veto. Maybe it's we have to go out to a third party. We have to get our friend Angela in order to help us decide that. Maybe it's the rest of the team comes and sits us down. Maybe we need a third party. What happens if something happens to you? I know I talked about this, like if it's me and Dawn, but more importantly, if you're solo. If you do come down with COVID, what are you doing with those kids? Do you have somebody who is going to step in and assist you? It's probably good to know who that is beforehand, and maybe even to put in your documents that you have with your parents, hey, if something happens, here's the communication process, like you'll know who this person is. I've vetted them. They're my substitutes. Fantastic. You don't have to, but it can make them feel better. You need it for you. And the exit strategy. How do you get out, and any other obligations between the company and the members? This can include things like, what if you don't have enough money to meet expenses? What happens? Do you guys get a loan? Do you all have to chip in $20? What else might be there? Do you need to communicate with each other about vacations? All of this is your operating agreement and bylaws. An operating agreement and bylaws can and should be amended from time to time. But I typically recommend when you write it, you want it to last you like 3 to 5 years. For decisions that are changed more often, those go into your minutes, or some of you might have heard of them as resolutions. Sometimes banks ask for them as resolutions. Dawn, I see I'm at quarter till. What's my time?
I'm not stressed. You're okay.
Okay, cool.
So we just want to make sure, because Patrick's here too. So when he's ready, but yeah. Noted. Fine.
Patrick, I will not take up too much of yours. Sorry.
Okay, he says thumbs up. There you go.
Cool. So these minutes are the things that come up more frequently, change more frequently, but they're also the piece of paper that you want to record your votes on and your big decisions on, and that you can then bring to Patrick when insurance is asking and saying, hey, we need proof that you guys have reviewed your privacy policies for the year in order to renew your cybersecurity insurance. You say, oh, great, we actually have that from the October meeting. I'll just get that over to you. Fantastic. We need authority that all of you have overlooked the loan considerations and that you guys have approved the loan. That would go into minutes. So big decisions, typically I say, if it's a big monetary decision, if you're deciding whether to buy more notebooks, it doesn't need to go into minutes. But if you're deciding to buy 3 computers, it probably should. So something that you would want that record of afterwards to show that you actually went through the process of making a decision. Even if you're solo, because if you are solo, you're not necessarily going to remember what went into that. And so this is good tracking for that too. Officer elections, board of director elections go into the minutes. If you have a board of director or managers, you will have minutes from member meetings and decisions. Remember, only those things that the members decide, and board of director meeting and decisions. Still should have that member meeting about once a year, but the board of directors have those quarterly meetings. Any changes to addresses, names, when I changed my name from Samantha Peasley to Samantha Brown when I got married, that went into minutes. We didn't go update the whole operating agreement bylaws with that. That doesn't need to go in there. Any authorization of monetary decisions. We want to give everybody a 3.5% cost of living increase. That would be a great place for minutes. You have a track record of that. Any amendments to previous minutes? Oh, we wrote that down wrong. We need to change that. Any amendments to the operating agreement that don't require a full rewrite? Hey, this section here about electing the board of directors, we've decided that we actually want them to be in for 3 years instead of 2 years. We only want to amend that section. That's fine for minutes. And then you just keep it with that, with the bylaws. Entry of new members, approve it in the minutes. Changing responsibilities, I said officers get delegated things. If you didn't put what their responsibilities were in the operating agreement, because you didn't think you were going to have a treasurer. Who needs a treasurer? I'm not big enough for a treasurer. Once you do that, you can put it in the minutes and just say, we're electing this person as treasurer. Here's their responsibilities. Anything that might be helpful with a paper trail, it's nice to have in minutes. This is your record. This is what you can then present to somebody afterwards. So if you are hiring or firing and you don't have formal paperwork that goes along with that, this is really nice for that. Especially if you think that it might be challenged by another applicant or something like that in the future. If you are firing and you think that it might be contentious, good to put in minutes. We sat down, we talked about this issue. We talked about it with the employee. Employee was non-responsive, so therefore we gave them their notice. We're getting their final paycheck drawn up. And then again, if insurance asks for anything or if your accountant asks for anything, those go in minutes. Last section, any questions on the bylaws, operating agreements, minutes, resolutions before I jump into this? Cool. All right, we'll do this quick then so Patrick can talk. Written agreements. Written agreements are super, super helpful. You don't necessarily need an attorney to draft written agreements. There are 4 things that make a good written agreements, and you will notice none of the 4 things are an attorney. 1, that it contains all the expectations for what happens if things go right. Okay, that means from both sides. So from your perspective, hey, you pay me $1,000 a month by the 1st of the month. And then for the rest of the month, I watch your children from Monday through Friday. Drop off is between 7:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. Pickup is between 4:30 p.m. and 5 p.m. I will provide them with snacks and healthy lunch. You provide me with a potential change of clothes. Here's the type of things we do during the day. Then also think about it from the parent's perspective, if there's anything that they might be concerned about there. Then, so that's what happens if everything goes right. Then you go back through that process and go, all right, at each of those points, what's something that could go wrong? And in that agreement, let's address that. Oh, you didn't pay your $1,000 by the beginning of the month. So am I just watching your kid now for free? No. If you show up, I will tell you, hi, I need your $1,000 check in my hand right at this moment, or I'm going to tell you that I don't have space for your child today. It sucks. It does suck. Nobody likes that one. But you've got to have a process for what happens if things go wrong. Otherwise, you're both going to be fighting at your front door. What happens if they drop the kid off at 6 a.m.? Well, there's no teachers there. What are you going to do? Like, just no, there's nobody here. If you drop off your child more than 15 minutes early, more than 3 days in a month, we will charge you an overage time fee for the following month. If you pick up your child more than an hour late, more than 3 times in a month, you will not be permitted to come back next month. If your child wets their pants while during the day, we will use their change of clothes. We'll put it in a bag. We will call you to come pick them up. Whatever that happens to go through the day, go through the things that are most likely to go wrong, address them. Do you have to address what happens if Godzilla comes by while I am watching your children and I have to then protect your children while fighting off a Japanese monster? No, you do not. The most likely things to go wrong. And then the things that keep each of you up at night. If Godzilla keeps you up at night, you are welcome to put him in there. But
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, the state gives a big list of like, I think it's like 29 things that have to be in those contracts, right?
Yep.
In those agreements. So,
Yep. But then but then I also put in there the catch-all, because you don't want to put Godzilla in there. So the catch-alls are insurance, hey, and indemnification, kind of a what you're not responsible for if the parents do something. Termination, always good to have in a contract. Termination. Look, worst comes to worst, I just get to tell you no. You get to tell me no. Here's what happens at that point. Okay, that's a nice, easy one in there. And then what if there's something we haven't thought of, a dispute resolution clause? Here's going to be the process if we have a dispute. We're going to go to third-party confidential mediation. It's going to be paid on by both sides. If we have to go to arbitration, here's what gets paid. So those are the catch-alls that go in there. Emily has a good question that is going to be answered on the slide right after this one. The other key thing with your written agreements is to review them regularly. Also, if you do have staff, review them with your staff. Ask them what was annoying. What did they wish that there was more protection for? What did they wish was communicated to all the parents? What was a pain? What trips up the parents? Typically, you want to review this at least once a year. Want to know a great time to review it if you only have once a year to do it? At your annual meeting. This is totally one of the things that I recommend to do at annual meetings, especially if you're a solo, because then you're like, oh, cool. I reviewed my written agreements and made the following changes, and now they're good for next year to go. It is more important to be correct to what you do than for an attorney to review it, because if you have something that you printed off of ChatGPT and you never follow that, it is an unenforceable piece of paper. If you have something you printed off of ChatGPT and you follow it, that's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. But it is more important that you actually write it yourself with those 4 things I put than anything else. If it's reviewed by an attorney, it is more likely to be upheld because an attorney will check things like is this accurate under the law? What typically happens when courts see things like this? But if you do it yourself without an attorney and you follow it, you're probably on some pretty sound legal footing. I'd much rather somebody do that than take something that I wrote and only follow 1/3 of it. That's going to be way better. I didn't put it on that one. Emily asks, can the handbook count? No. Technically, I put it on this one. Under the law, a parent handbook does not count as an agreement default. That being because that parent acknowledgement is there's a lot of debate about whether the handbook in and of itself, if you don't have another agreement, is appropriate consideration. So a contract has to have consideration, means each of you get something. If all of your handbook terms are contained in an agreement that says it's an agreement and you both sign and date it and there's consideration, fantastic. That is a valid agreement. So why isn't the handbook by itself? Usually because the handbook is one-sided. Also because the handbook often doesn't have all of the terms in it. It has a lot of the parent terms, but not a bunch of the other terms. So Colorado is what we call a 4 corners state, meaning that if it's not in the agreement, it doesn't exist. However, there's a way around that, which is if you have like a basic agreement with your parents, and then you say any violation by the parents of all of the provisions of the handbook are material terms of this contract, and any violation of the handbook is justification for us to terminate the agreement, you're probably fine, but you wouldn't be able to get damages for like an individual breach in the handbook. So what I mean by that is it would allow you to terminate without any penalty. But if like a parent took all of your workbook pages, copied them and sold them on the internet for $5 a pop, and only the handbook says that they can't do that, it's probably not enforceable. So it's kind of this is where an attorney is helpful to kind of explain where the handbook is an enforceable contract and where you need an additional contract. Emily, that is not a very clear answer. It's one we get every single time. Hasn't become any clearer because even though the law says a handbook is not a contract, there's a lot of then asterisks and buts behind it. So the moral of the story that I say on that one is, ideally, you should have a contract with the parents, an agreement for childcare, and a parent handbook. And anything that is important enough to you that you would want to sue the parent in court for should be in the agreement. And everything else can be in the handbook, and just have something in the agreement that says this incorporates the handbook, which you have included. And just know that that's not a perfect that's probably the most perfect solution there. I hope that helped a little bit. At least on that front. I know that's not as satisfying. But that is what we typically recommend for that one. It was so lovely talking to everybody. Patrick, I'm sorry that you got to hear the tail end of that one with things I'm sure that you already know. But as Dawn said, you guys are all entitled to an SBDC consult with me. Just reach out to Michelle and she will get you my calendar. I will say it's a little full for August right now. But that's great because that means you guys get to listen to lots more experts before you come talk to me and gather up lots more questions on that front. Yeah, but any other questions right now, you're welcome to ask. Otherwise, I will hand that back over.
They're a quiet group this time around. I don't know.
Just because you guys know everything already.
Let's see here. Perfect.
Well, thank you guys
so much Sam, for coming. We really appreciate it. You guys, it's going to be in your best interest if you have questions about this to connect with Samantha through the SBD website and to sign up for a consultation so that you can get very specific supports. That'll help to clear up the areas where you're like, oh, where there's that tension and uncertainty. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, you guys have fun with Patrick learning about how to avoid paying for everything that I just said if the worst case scenario happens.
That's it, exactly. Patrick, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everybody.
I did share screen, so you're welcome to do what you need.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. I just wanted to say thank you for having me. I know my wife, Connie, we run the agency together. We've been doing this about 23 years. So, but she's much better looking than I am, so I'm sorry about that. But hopefully it will be helpful for what we would talk about today. Connie worked in the field, so she is, it's near and dear to her heart. So that's why she loves doing these things to make sure that it's covered properly. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay,
thank you for coming.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to try not to make you fall asleep too quickly. So, put questions in the chat there, and I will do my best to answer them. I should leave some time at the end there, and we'll go from there. And the last slide will have our contact information. We always get a lot of questions after these things, and that's wonderful. It'll have Connie's contact information and our agency number, so that'll be at the end. So if something doesn't click or you have any questions and you want to hold them, you can always give us a call. So I'll jump in here and share my screen and let me know if you guys can see this. Let's see. Okay. You guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, why, and by the way, Sam, I was here for about a half an hour of hers, and that was really good stuff. It's nice to have advisors when you own a business. And so, we people like us and people like Sam can help you to kind of, work on and keep doing what you're passionate about and not have to worry about these things that if you're set up correctly. So she did a great job and talked about a lot of really important things. So, why do we need to insure our business? Your business and the earning power, from your business are really your biggest asset. Okay. And you want to protect that. You don't want to leave it vulnerable, and because one little thing, unfortunately, can have it taken away from you by one lawsuit or an expensive claim for which you don't have the right coverage. Okay. That's why getting it set up correctly from the beginning is so important. And if you guys want to interrupt at any time, feel free as well. You got into this business for a reason, like most people do, right? It's something you're passionate about, and you want to be set up correctly so you can help the kids and moving forward. The cost is not too bad. It can be as little as $500 per year. Our average premium is around $1,100 or less than $100 a month. It really depends on the risks you have and the coverage that you need. Okay. Let's see here. And we'll go to, let's see here. Okay. Some people have, the business outside the home. Some people have it inside the home. There is coverage on a lot of homeowners policies for daycare up to a certain amount of kids, sometimes up to 6 kids. But a lot of times it's not enough coverage for what you need. Okay. And there's some questions you can ask your insurance carrier. And I've got a few of them here. Does your carrier, number one, do they know that you are doing a daycare? I've had that happen before where someone started it a couple months ago and then they talked to somebody and they said, you've told your insurance person yet? So you really want to have them know that so they can, there's an endorsement you can get on a homeowner's policy. A lot of times it's not enough coverage, but it's a start and it can be a good supplement. But you want to make sure all of these exposures that you have are covered. Do you have enough liability limits for as many kids as you have? You want to protect your personal exposure. Sam talked a little bit about that. You have your business and then you have your personal, which are different. And you want to make sure that you're protecting your business enough so nobody can try to go after you personally. Will the losses from, if you have a policy through your homeowner's insurance or an endorsement, will the losses, if you have any claims, okay, and I'll explain what some claims potentially can be here. If you have any claims, could that jeopardize your homeowner's insurance rates? Okay, that's a question that you can ask your homeowner's insurance carrier. Does your homeowners provide specialized coverage like child molestation and abuse and professional liability coverage? That's another question. Is there defense cost coverage if you are accused of abuse? That's what, Sam talked about, the legal aspects. Insurance companies have attorneys that will help defend you in situations. So, is there defense cost coverage, and check that with your homeowner's policy as well. And does it provide no fault medical payments for accidents covering children in your care? That's, the stuff that a kid falls and you can get the broken arm taken care of right away through your policy. So if you have insurance, do you have the correct coverage is kind of what our main focus is there. Okay. Any questions so far? Or... Okay. Let's see here. We're going to go to 1, 2, 4. Okay, so terminology, general liability is basically liability coverage for your business. Here's an example. If you have a swing in the backyard and the boy falls off the swing and his front teeth are knocked out, mom files a claim for dental work plus additional expenses for emotional distress. That can be covered by your liability policy and for your business. Okay, these are just some examples of things that have actually happened in cases and some coverage that you have. Child abuse and molestation example, a parent claims one of your employees bruised their child's arm. Even if it is determined that you were not negligent, you still could have defense costs that would be reimbursed. Okay, so somebody sues you, but you win the case, there's still costs there, and then the insurance would help you out with that. And I'm sorry to talk about these things, but unfortunately we see them every day in our job. And, like I said earlier, you're very passionate about what you're doing. And I commend you guys. It's such a wonderful thing that you guys do. And you just want to be able to focus on the kids and not have to worry about this stuff. So setting it up correctly is really important. Auto coverage can either be coverage for a center van used for field trips, or hired or non-owned auto coverage for an employee's vehicle. If you had an employee and you use their vehicle for something. Here's an example. You ask one of your employees to run to the store for craft supplies for a project at your center. Your employee rear ends another car at a stop sign, causing damage to their car and injuring the other driver. That can be covered through your insurance policy because they were doing that work for the business. Okay. Medical payments, coverage for injuries at your childcare. One example of that: 2 kids are playing with cars together. One of them decides they want the car that the other child is playing with. I'm sure that's never happens. They get into a tug of war match before you can intervene, and one of them ends up falling and breaking their arm. So those are kind of medical payments that can be paid out very quickly, no questions asked, to take care of things like that. And hopefully, there's not a lawsuit coming after that. Sam touched on the cyber liability and data breach stuff, electronic data threats and breaches, of your sensitive information, fraud, identity theft, computer attacks, software failures, those sort of things can be covered through that coverage. Let's say somebody hacks into your computer system, threatens to leak your customers' sensitive information if you don't pay a ransom. I'm not going to name this, but the college, but it happened to a college in Denver not too long ago. They had to pay a ransom. Employment practices liability. If you have employees, this provides you with coverage if an employee feels wronged. Okay. For example, if they claim discrimination, sexual harassment, wrongful termination, et cetera, you have an employee practices liability as part of the policy that will help you defend you against that. And then obviously workers' comp insurance, workers' compensation. If there's health insurance for workplace accidents, this is required by law if you have employees. Okay, you can opt out if you're a sole proprietor, but if you have any employees at all, you have to have it. An example of that, one of your employees comes in early and you're busily washing the windows before the kids arrive. They trip over the bucket of water and break their wrist. Sounds kind of silly, but this stuff, it happens more often than you might think. So that employee, you could file a workers' compensation claim. Instead of having that come out of pocket to the business, the insurance would take care of it. One other thing that I'm kind of adding to what Connie has here is a business continuation plan, and Sam touched on that. Especially if you're in a partnership, or even if you're not, and you have someone that maybe is a key person that helps you run the daycare. If something were to happen to you, God forbid, the worst thing happens and you pass away, you kind of have to look ahead and say, what happens to my business at that point? That's called business continuation. Or if you lost a key person, you had your number one person and they moved out of town with their spouse for a different job. How am I going to run my business? And I have to replace that person. So those are some things you can think ahead and possibly avoid. So any questions on that? Okay. Let's see. A big part of what we do is mitigating risk, right? We try to help you as advisors to ask these questions. It's very frustrating when, I'm sure you guys have done it with your homeowners and auto insurance, like, why do these agents ask me all these questions? It's like, why do they need to know all this? And the reason is we want to protect you in your particular individual situation, which I can promise you, doing this for 23 years, each individual situation is completely different. And so we ask a lot of questions about what's important to you. And we want to help you to avoid these things from happening. Okay. Some of the things that we can do to mitigate the risk. One of them says you're doing it now. Taking classes like this, you guys educating yourself is really, really huge. I had a business consultant one time tell me, you need to work on your business as much as you can work in your business. Okay. We're good at what we do. I have a consultant. I've been doing this 23 years and I have a consultant that helps me. We meet every other week. And it's amazing how much that can help. They sit outside and kind of look at these things. So I commend you for taking these classes to help, so you can get your business set up correctly. So good job on that. Being licensed, following legal guidelines from the state. I know, insurance agent, right? I'm just going to tell you to follow all the rules. The way I look at it, I don't want my own agency, for example, anybody that I've hired in my agency, I always explain, look, we do things by the book here. I just don't want to ever jeopardize your job or my job or anything like that. So get licensed, follow the legal guidelines from the state, the certifications, the state ratio rules, how many kids that you can legally work with. And if in-home, access to the personal pets, that's something people don't know this, but the number one claim on a homeowner's insurance policy is a dog bite. Number one. And so, limit that access to personal pets if you have them. And it's just, I've seen cases where it's the nicest dog. I've met the dog, but a child doesn't know that and touches the dog and surprises it, and you just never know what happens there. If you have playground equipment, safety measures, inspections, and avoid trampolines and pools. I'm just going to tell you that. If you can help it, I know that's tough. Trampolines, I grew up with trampolines and they're so much fun. But if you're having a daycare in the house, it's a different ball game. So, and providing care that is out of the ordinary, 24-hour care, unusual locations, et cetera. Those are things to kind of watch out for and be very careful. You have to even have things set up really, really even more carefully for that. And then past claims. So that's where when insurance, two things with claims for insurance is frequency and severity. So if there's a really, really, really big claim, boy, your insurance rates might go up a ton, and that's going to make that even harder to, boy, I've got to I don't know if I can afford it anymore. You have to really kind of, and if we're setting you up correctly from the beginning, then hopefully we can avoid those type of things. Okay. And then the frequency, if there's constant claims, that's another thing that insurance companies don't like, is if the same thing keeps happening over and over again. All right. So those are just a few things that you can help, to risk, to watch out and mitigate the risk that you have. So we're almost done here, and I can take any questions you guys have. I can't see if they're in there's questions. Are there any questions in there right now? I'll look at the
I
end.
have a
Nope.
question.
Yep.
I have a question for
Yeah,
you.
please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I have a large childcare center, and it's required that we have $1 million on certain things, like for your trips, your field trips, you got to have $1 million insurance coverage.
Mhm.
For your childcare period, for any Denver public schools, you got to have another $1 million. So I pay for $1 million. I pay for insurance for $1 million twice
I see.
every year.
Okay.
So are you saying that we need more insurance to take care of ourselves with what you're telling me?
Yeah.
To ensure that we're gonna be okay if anything happens, aside from that insurance that we're already paying?
It's hard for me to tell exactly what the insurance is that you have, but that's a great question. We as insurance, we don't want you guys to be overinsured. We don't want you to have unnecessary coverages, paying extra premium. Insurance is expensive enough as it is.
Right.
So one thing I would suggest, and you kind of are there, you're leading me right into the next slide here,
Oh.
which is wonderful, which is reviewing your coverage with your insurance agent. Like Dawn said earlier, I would take this PowerPoint and recording and kind of jot some stuff down, or call our office, or call your current agent and review the coverage with them and just say, why do I have $1 million here? Why do I have $1 million here? That's something they should be able to explain very easily to you.
Okay.
And things change in your business as they do in the insurance game, and also legally in the states. So I don't think your agent wants you to have too much coverage, but there are separate liability limits for one thing, and then there might be for another. Okay, field trips, it might be kind of separate than something else. It's a great question, and we at our agency, we call every single customer every year. We have 750 customers. We call them every single year to offer a review. It's not exciting. Insurance is not super exciting, but our customers know, and I'm sure your agent would feel this way as well, to just, when people call in and say, I'd like to review my coverage, we like that. We want to make sure that things haven't changed in your life, in your business. Okay, I added 2 kids, we're doing longer field trips now, those sort of things. So long answer to your question, but the communication is really key. And I would ask all the questions I've mentioned today, I would ask that of your current agent, and then also kind of say, can you explain to me that coverage I have, and is any of it unnecessary, or is there anything else I need? Does that sound okay? Thank you for the question. That's a great question.
I have something to add to that.
Yeah.
When I first started my in-home daycare, I added the $1 million policy, like the umbrella policy, specifically because I was doing childcare.
Mhm.
And then a couple months ago, with one of my associations, we had an insurance meeting. So I called my agent to double check my coverage and all that. And then she told me that my umbrella $1 million policy didn't cover my childcare.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that's a great question. That's in that review, I would ask that. I really like umbrella policies. What an umbrella policy is, and thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. It's a separate policy. If you can picture, kind of sits over your insurance policies here, gives you an extra $1 million anywhere. We just did a $5 million one last week. It gives you extra coverage in case that really catastrophic thing happens. So it doesn't wipe out all the hard work you've done and wipe out your business. But the question you bring up, which is an important one, is what does my umbrella cover? Why do I have that? And the reviews I do, I think every couple of years, all my customers that have umbrellas, they ask that question because they're kind of, you know, I know we like this idea. Why did we get this? And we kind of remind them, you know, and there's a personal umbrella you can have on your home and auto and those sort of things, which I think is a really good deal. You get a discount on your home and auto for having it, but it also gives you a liability so you're not wiped out. The same thing for a business. You can go, you know, like Ernestine talked about the $1 million coverage. You can go higher than that, or you can add an umbrella. But that's a great question, Nicole, is that, you know, what does that umbrella cover? And it might cover some things and not other things. So I would certainly ask, and if you want me to review anything that you guys feel like sending Connie and I just to review, even if you're not customers of ours, we're kind of nerds like that. We will look at those things for you. You know, bylaws and different things like that from have insurance clauses and all those type of things. So, you know, and your agents will do that for you as well. I'm just offering it if you want a second set of eyes. So, you know, we as insurance people, we don't want people to think I just pay my dues. I pay my insurance premiums. What am I getting for that? I never have to use it. And we want people to get value. Okay. So great question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I asked it in the chat too, but you spoke, you had that, no worries. You had that slide about the home daycare. And then there's a few of us here that are nonprofits and different other LLC models, but within a completely separate facility that's not a home. It's just truly solely for childcare. Is it different in terms of those pieces you spoke to of what one should have for coverage?
Yes, I would say it's different in that some people that have home daycares, they just have an endorsement on their homeowner's policy. That's really all they have. We would advise them to really look closely at that and get a policy like you probably have, Emily, which is for your location. You know, and oftentimes we've had this happen where one of the daycares, you know, they've got 6 kids at the house and they want to grow to 12. Well, we have to move to a location. We just did one a few months ago with someone who, you know, was searching for a year and a half, finally found a location. So to answer your question, yeah, there are different liability issues, you know, having your own center versus home. So, and I don't mean to dodge the question, but you know, the individual situation really does matter, but there are differences. Absolutely. So yeah, no, great question. So, but again, that reviewing it, if you want a competitive comparison, you know, if you're ever going to shop your insurance to somewhere else, I'm just going to give you one tip too, which is give yourself 30 to probably 45 or 60 days ahead of when your thing renews, because they take time to put together. And, you know, we've had people that they get their renewal and they don't really look at it until maybe 2 or 3 days before it renews, and they realize their premium went up a ton. And then there's just no way they're going to get a quote back in time to do that. So, you know, insurance agents, we don't mind if people shop around and look around. That's just part of being a business owner. You have to look at expenses every year. But that's just one tip I would say is that Connie has on here is just, you know, request it a quote before your next renewal, 30 to 60 days, and then see what they come up with if you want to do that. But did I answer your question okay, Emily? Okay. All right. Thank you. So other than that, let's see. Let me find, I don't know why I can't find the chat questions here. So, but any other questions?
That was the only question in chat.
What's that?
That was the only question in chat.
Thank you so much. Okay, cool. So our information's on this slide here. Connie is my wife, and she normally does these things, and she does a great job, and she's helped a lot of folks. So her information's on here, cwall@amfam.com, our main agency phone number. If she's not there, you can talk to me. You can talk to anybody. We have a great team. Hope it was helpful and not too, you know, sleepy, but it's really important, you guys, to get things set up correctly on the legal front, like with Sam, and then on the insurance front with an insurance company. And there are no bad questions. Ask a million questions. I love when people come to my agency and they want to know everything rather than just, yeah, whatever you say, Pat. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, whatever you want. I don't want that pressure. And I don't want that. It is really not. I have to dive into your situation really to kind of know you and what's important to you. and that sort of thing. I would really like you guys to just focus on your business, take care of those kids, and know that you're kind of set up correctly from the beginning, and that you're reviewing each year in case there are changes. But I'll leave it at that. And any last questions at all? And
I have another question. I'm
Sure.
question queen tonight.
as many as you want. No, I got time here, so yeah, we're good.
I know there's a few of us on here, so hopefully this will be pertinent to others. For the nonprofit model, something Sam said earlier about around the bylaws will cover one of those like things and that separate liability out in terms of insurance or whatever, or
Sure.
claims. But then I know for nonprofits are often recommended as well to have directors and officers insurance policies.
Yes.
Is that redundant if the structure of a corporation is already protective?
I would say no, because I would here's an example. It's a little different type of business, but associations, there's directors and officers for condo associations and townhome associations and those sort of things. And we always highly recommend the directors and officers policy. They're really inexpensive, Emily. $400 a year, $500 a year. If you're on a board of directors, I'm currently on 2 boards with my Rotary Club. I was on a school board at one time, and I wanted to know, being an insurance geek, that if something happened and we were sued, we had adequate coverage. So I don't think it's overkill. It would really depend on how everything's set up with the nonprofit, and that's where I would defer to somebody like Sam, and because Sam and I would kind of work together with the customer to kind of say, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? Is the nonprofit squared away? You want protection, but you don't want to be insurance poor either. And there are ways to do that. Liability is not very expensive. That's what people will find if they want a $1 million umbrella, they want to go to a 2, it's not that expensive. Or on their homeowners insurance, they go from $300,000 to $500,000. You're talking a few dollars a month. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here is not breaking the bank. But if it's set up properly, it can really, on the back end, including nonprofits and everything else, just make sure that there's no headaches. And and that it's set up correctly. So if somebody does sue, you've got the protection. So I hope that answers your question. It is individualized. And then the nonprofit, we would have to kind of take that to our underwriting team and say, okay, here's what the entity is. And then, we're the frontline underwriters in an agency. But anything that we have any questions about, we have loads of people with our company to kind of give us insight that, okay, this is a specific situation. Here's what we recommend. And we do that. Even in doing it, as long as we've done this, we always ask for a second set of eyes on things. So that's
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but feel free to call any specific questions like that. I can kind of take it to our team and to our underwriting team. Even if you're not a customer of ours, I'm happy to do it. And we want to help you guys out. I've been a business owner 23 years in insurance, 5 years before that in transportation. And so I'm so proud of you guys for what you're doing. I know how hard it is. I've been doing it a long time, Connie and I together. And I want to focus on taking care of my insurance clients and not worry so much about if something bad happens, am I going to be okay? So, and that's what we want for you guys. So thank you for the question.
And so you're just saying that it would be okay to just confirm the coverage that we have now and making sure that all our bases are covered and, we have everything that we need and we don't have too much of what we don't need.
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can contact us. You can contact your current agent, kind of see if you get, different answers.
Right.
Sort of thing, but you're current. If my customers know, and Connie and I, our customers know that they can call us anytime for anything. They can talk to me anytime. They can talk to Connie anytime. You have these situations that pop up, Jackie, where you're like, this is happening right now. What do I do? That's
right.
Where, we have 24-hour coverage at American Family. So no, definitely happy to help any way we can and give you a second set of eyes.
Perfect. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for your time.
Getting a sense of what your homework is for this week, right?
Yeah, welcome to entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Patrick. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Don.
Have a
Nice
good
to
one.
meet you guys. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Oh, goodness. So that's a lot of information, right? Between the legal stuff and the insurance stuff. And And who wakes up and goes, ooh, I'm so excited. I get to learn about that or think about that, right? That is like the last thing that people generally want to pay attention to. But I think I mentioned in the last class real quickly that maybe I didn't. My husband and I have had the same insurance agents just for our family, the same agency for years and years and years. And occasionally they'd like go, oh, well, here, your rate is going down, or we're switching you to this other so you can have a little bit of savings, right? This last year, we were like, what if we just price this out with a different agency? And so we did, and it dropped $1,500. So for that reason alone, it's worth a little bit of shopping around. Okay. Because if it puts that amount of money back into your pocket for your business, that's a huge thing. So I think it's definitely worth checking in with them to see, like, what's that look like? If you are a sole proprietor, I hope you feel the sense of urgency to not be a sole proprietor any longer, right? And so if you need help with changing the structure of your business to do the LLC. I've walked with people through the Secretary of State's application to become an LLC over and over and over again. Like that's easy. That's not scary. If you need help with that, just sign up for a consultation. I'm happy to do that with you. If you may want to go to the Secretary of State's site and do a search for the business name, because if you're a sole proprietor and just been doing business and someone else is registered with the state under your business name and they have that name, you don't have a name for your business, right? So it gives you protections by registering there as well, because the last thing you need is someone to be doing business under your business name and developing a reputation that undermines what you're trying to accomplish. Make sense? Someone talked to me about what you did for your homework last week, because I know it seems like forever and a day ago, but we were talking about recruitment and staff management and all of that sort of stuff. Were you guys able to do anything or accomplish anything along those lines last week? Go ahead. Okay.
I'm the question queen tonight. Sorry.
Go for it. It's all good.
For the reason you said, Dawn, these are the last things we want to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. It's but go ahead. What's your question?
I was gonna move on indeed into your question. I'm all fired up. The timing was so amazing last week because I'm in the midst of writing our employee handbook for the first time in all of our 5 years. We haven't had one. So I'm writing one right now, and we had combined with really bad turnover last year with staffing. So I'm just in that culture, how do you retain staff? And so that was really fun in our breakout sessions and then during the session too last week to add to that. So I created a staff
when it's timely, right? That's so exciting. So how's your handbook looking? Is it good?
Yes, it's 44 pages long. It's a beast, but yeah, I've worked really hard on it, and I'm happy to share it with everybody here too. They can have it for themselves and chop it up and make it their own. But I was given the gift as well by a few other schools so I can kind of build from theirs too. But my homework was creating a staff lounge with chocolate and bubbly waters and like a couch they can sit on, a place they can come to. There really wasn't one before. So you are seen and loved and heard here.
Yeah, creating that culture, right? That environment. That's fantastic. Oh, you're giving me chills. I'm so excited. Because it is a competitive market out there, right? I mean, it is very competitive. So when you think about marketing to clients, you have to think about marketing for staff as well. And it's a good, you guys have been on Facebook. You know when a program's doing it wrong, right? because those staff members jump on there and are like, can you believe my program just did this? Don't be that program, right? I can, Nicole, when I send you the breakouts in just a few minutes, I will get, first I'll share the contact information for them because they can absolutely insure you as well. And then I've got one other company, Right Quote, that can do insurance as well for you. If you do just a quote through Right Quote, here's a plug. You get a free membership at ECEA. So just saying, which is a nice little extra perk. But then quote with a couple companies and see what comes out of that and what you want to do. So I'll have those details for you when you come back out of those breakout groups. Who else? What else did you guys accomplish from last week? Everyone's like, don't look at me.
I was able to give I'm a licensed home daycare with an assistant, but I was able to give her a 1-year bonus today for her first year here, which like made her super happy and made her day.
Oh, and made her much more loyal to you, right?
Yes.
Great job, Ashley. That's exciting. That's really good to hear. So, okay, so I did want to talk to you guys a little bit. Last week, I didn't get a lot of chance to talk to you in terms of everybody here works with your counsel, right? Your early childhood counsel. You know how to find them, connect with them. Okay, perfect. Do any of you do CCAP? Not do CCAP? Okay, just want to make you aware that they the state submitted a proposal in June to the feds asking to be able to do CCAP a little bit different. And so we should know probably by September, October, whether or not they've authorized that. They've authorized that request in a couple states now to be able to do figures not based off of the market survey that they do every few years, but to do it based off of like quality cost calculators and stuff, which actually would end up resulting in a higher payout, which is exciting news. CCDF regulations right now on the federal level are being, they are looking at changing some rules in the rule set on that level, which is amazing because what that actually does is it creates, it creates rule sets from the federal level that tell the states that they have to be able to pay for slots versus attendance, or they have to, so there's all kinds of, they have to pay in advance instead of after the fact. Like they are really working on doing some significant changes. And I'm just looking for that post because I want to share that with you so that you guys can, here we go, so that you guys can actually go and do public comment with the feds to encourage them to, oh, she's gone. Let me put this to everyone. So there's a post that gives all of the specifics about that. Please go and give comments about how this would benefit your program and what a tremendous difference it would make for you as a child care provider. Okay, because if these things really, it is action for once, guys. Like you hear talk so much of the time, and on the federal level, talk, and then never any kind of real tangible action. We know when they change rule sets, it changes actions, and so this is extremely unusual and extremely exciting. So you can read all about it there, but I encourage everyone and spread the word. I'll put it in next week's update again. I think the final date is the 31st, if I remember correctly, to give feedback. So just really, that's amazing. In CCAP, the one downside, real quick, the one downside of if they give more money, what does that mean? In our state, means fewer kids get to be served. And right now, only about 10% of the CCAP kids that qualify are actually receiving CCAP. And so what they would have to do then is turn around and go talk to legislators and ask them for additional general funds to add to that CCAP pot to serve more families. Go ahead, Ernestine.
How would that affect the Colorado Shines? Because in CCAP, you're paid based on your rating. If
Well,
you're a 2, 3, 4, or 5.
but
So
those-
is that
Yeah, it would be good, I'm telling you, because those rating levels were all set based off of the market survey in your
Yes.
area versus this quality, versus the cost of care calculators that they're using now, which would be huge, okay? I can't ever talk to childcare providers without referencing ECA. It's just impossible for me, so I'm sorry. But we're actually looking at how do we drive down costs for all of the businesses, because it's great to have grant funding and all these other things, but we know that funding's going away. And we know that there is an inequity in the system between privately owned businesses. Nonprofits don't have to pay property taxes. Public schools don't have to pay property taxes. That for programs can be up to $150,000 a year, right? So we're going to work on legislation this year to change that. We just got a partner. I've got the contract that I've got to tweak a few things on and get a new contract from them for it. But we've got a credit card vendor that we can drive your credit card costs down to $5 a month instead, which means for a lot of programs, it's like $48,000 a year in savings. So we're really looking at tangible ways to decrease costs for business so that we can help you sustain. We believe that childcare is a public good, and so we need some leveling of the field, and so we'll do what we need to legislatively, but we'll also do it through these other mechanisms to kind of level that field so that you can compete more fairly. So makes sense. The other that I wanted to, okay, Colorado Shines, you're right. Like, and do you need a level 5 to get paid the highest amount? No, you only need a level 4. In all of the charts for the state, a 4 and a 5 pay the same amount. So I see programs put themselves under this tremendous amount of pressure over, we need a 5, we need a 5. Well, honestly, all you need is that 4, because some parents know about Colorado Shines, but most of them really just still don't. Right? You can explain it to them, that's great. But I'm just saying you got to weigh pressure with outcomes too at times. Okay. I know everyone's dying to hear about UPK, and I'm not going to talk about it tonight. I'm going to make you guys wait till the last week for that one. But I will give you a peek at this. I just built a web page on our website that pretty much answers most of the UPK stuff. It'll be underdeveloped. It will continue to tweak this and add information and whatever. But we wanted the business perspective on questions somewhere centrally where you could go and look at all of that. So you're going to have lots of questions out of that, I'm sure. And like I said, the last week that we do class, like, it's all just about questions and what you have and what you want to talk about. It's no lecture, no guests, nothing. And so we can go in depth at that point and really look at those things. We are at 7:43, so I need to send you guys to your breakout groups real fast so that you can spend 10 minutes or so talking to one another. I'll leave you there except the last 2 minutes of the hour so that we can just wrap up. How's that sound? Okay, so let you decide, and then I'm going to do 2 rooms and say homes and center. Okay, so I'm going to send you there. have conversations about all of this, support one another, and I'll pull you back just in the last 2 minutes and we'll be on our way. Is it giving you the option? It should. There it goes. Okay. Oh, no, let's see here. Okay, I can send you there. Ernestine, oh, there you go. Are you at home? I forget. Center, okay. Assigned to center. Michelle, are you home or center? Remind me.
I'm sorry. I
It's
I don't have a center yet. I'm in like the developing stages. So
Okay, but
probably
that's still,
probably center.
that'll be a good place for you to go to get that exposure. So I'll send you there. Thank you. Hey. Oh, you froze. There it goes. I'll be back in less than a minute. That's pretty interesting. Look at you. How'd that go? Pretty good? Wonderful. Here are the couple places for homes. Right quote is only for homes. The wall agency that we just saw, they can do homes or centers. So make sure to, just so you're not wasting your time chasing down the wrong people. Next week, we have got Karen Patel coming to talk about your favorite budgeting and finance. Right? But this is the stuff that can make you a nerd about your business, puts you in the driver's seat, helps you to feel empowered and capable. And so it's going to be a great thing. But this week, go do something either about your legal structure or do something about your insurance. Do something. And definitely try at some point with one of our specialists, one of our consultants, just try to set a meeting up with them or myself, just so that you practice that, so that you know how to do that, so that if you ever run into issues down the line, you have an additional place to go for support and resources in the community. We're going to be back here the same time next week. And then if you have, stick around if you have any questions and I'll help you with that. But otherwise, you guys have a great week, okay? Okay, good deal. Oh, I'm so tired.
Don, what was the insurance company you said for home insurance?
So there's
Not
wall,
home,
for centers, wall agencies. So
Okay.
So it's 303-426. I know you have your hands full.
Oh, you're good. I'm gonna just write this real quick. And then was there one you said that was through the ECEA?
So we work with CCIG a lot as centers. So
For in-home, sorry.
so right quote. Yeah, sorry.
Right?
It's so hard to teach these mixed classes and keep
I know,
everybody
I'm
straight.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
And I haven't been
So
on
right
at
quote,
till
if you
tonight.
if you do David at RQ, that's who.com. That's his email, and just tell him that, you know, you were talking to Don and from ECEA, and then he'll make sure when he gives you a quote, he'll give you a free membership he'll pay for the membership for the year with us as well, which is a cool benefit, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Have a
I'm
good
gonna-
night.
You too.
Hey, Nicole.